female gaze. And in no way was I running them through the, my male brain. As much as I can try to see the world as a woman, I never will be able to. And I know what I don't know. So early on, we brought on an intimacy coordinator, and I started meeting with her to figure out what are ways that I can shoot this. How can this always reflect back, one, to the source material, and while we might not be recreating exactly what was in the book, how can we recreate the feeling?
Latest dump of documents on the docket that has allowed me to go back in time and remember some of the stuff that we've talked about and some of my reporting. And I found something that I think is pretty significant. One is in the amended complaint. There's a point in time where Blake Lively claims that Justin Baldoni was talking about flipping the narrative on a story where Ryan said the movie was a disaster. And in the amended complaint, the second time, they claim that this was a rumor and that it was not Mr. Reynolds that said that. And they had instructed their agent, Leslie Sloan, not to speak to the media. But the story that's referenced came from Leslie Sloan. And the statements are completely out of context based upon what was revealed in the entire text exchange. And then also, last week, Blake and her team was caught lying, misusing statements by Baldoni, trying to claim that Baldoni was using bots. And then they referenced this exchange between Abel and Baldoni about boosting a post, implying that these were boosted as bots to go after Lively. But the documents provided by Wayfair show that that's not true. I have one of two theories here. Either Blake Lively received cherry-picked data from Stephanie Jones that was not in context, or order, that some of the threads were out of order. Maybe she didn't have entire threads in time. Maybe she only got some of the comments, or they received all of them and then they just did like a search and they just found ones that they could fit to use their narrative, or both. But I do think that Stephanie Jones might have not given them everything. I do think that Stephanie Jones gave them only what they needed so that they could go after Wayfair. And I think that through discovery, some of these are being proven to be not as they appear. So I want to talk about one specifically. This is in her amended complaint. Okay, so on page 88, it says August 15th, Mr. Baldoni texted Miss Nathan and Miss Abel stating that his business partner, Mr. Sarowitz, suggested that flipping the narrative arising from unnamed sources who had made false claims about Mr. Reynolds' involvement in the script of the film and suggested ways to manipulate those rumors to make Mr. Reynolds appear to be anti-feminist. There was no truth to these claims. It's an article from the Daily Mail. The author on the byline is James Vasuka. We know by now James wrote articles that were fed to him by Leslie Sloan. She has not denied that she gave him information. He only had a couple articles in that August period, and one very specifically was about how he needed to come in to save the script. Okay? That came from Leslie Sloan. And Baldoni, in her amended complaint, says, no worries, quickly. My partner Steve asked about flipping the narrative from this leak this AM about Ryan saying script was a disaster and he saved the movie, to something about Ryan claiming the female hired feminist writer didn't know how to tackle female film, using their own words against them. Baldoni stated this was an easy flip before Nathan indicated that she was already working on a story for Variety that would achieve this goal. Now, that article with Variety was about scabbing, him writing during the writer's strike. The chief problem with these stories was that they were not based on Mr. Reynolds' own words. Mr. Reynolds never said that the script was a disaster and that he saved the movie, nor did he ever claim that the female hired was a feminist writer who didn't know how to tackle a female film, nor was there any evidence backing up Mr. Sarowitz's proposed line of attack on Mr. Reynolds. Just a week before this creative suggestion to smear Mr. Reynolds, Mr. Sorowitz had posed for pictures with Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath at the opening of their Wayfair Foundation, wearing a shirt that said, "Seek always to do which is right and noble." His proposal to retaliate against Miss Lively by seeking to harm her husband's reputation makes a mockery of the mantra that he professes to follow on the camera. That's new. That's all new to this complaint, okay? And then they go in to say that she expressly instructed her publicist to not engage with inquiries. And then they show a text message. But we know by now that Leslie was engaging. And this text message is not from August 15th, but it's from August 29th. "Hi, it's Les. Just checking in to tell you I'm thinking about you, B, and the family. Hugs. Thank you. This is the craziest thing I've ever witnessed in my life, but it will be resolved. Hi, sorry to bother you, but this is clogging my inbox. I'm not answering." That's from August 29th, not August 15th. So misdirecting on the timeline. And he says it's imperative we stay silent on everything and speak to nobody. As I mentioned in Denmark before Blake's premiere, to not talk to anyone about any of these attacks on Blake. Just making sure you haven't done that at any point. He told her to do that on August 29th. August 29th, not August 15th. So 2 weeks before, Leslie did talk to the Daily Mail, and Leslie did put out that article. And the article he told her not to talk about was related to the brother-in-law, Bart, not Baldoni. These are interesting ways, the way that her team manipulates facts, okay? But then if you actually look at the text thread from that time, it doesn't go in the way in which they would explain. In fact, it says, "My partner asked about flipping the narrative. Melissa Nathan says it's working in our favor. He's already looking worse and continues to play the narrative of them being awful. It's playing good for us, bad for them." And then he says something about Ryan claiming that the female hired was a feminist writer, didn't know how to tackle a female film, using their own words against them. This is an easy flip. And I don't think he was saying verbatim that Ryan said that a female writer couldn't write the film. He was going off that the film was the script was a disaster. Okay. And then, but Tatiana Siegel from Variety wants to do a follow-up call with us for a story similar. We have a call with her in later. And that story was about Ryan's scabbing, not about the script disaster. And the fact that they saved the script from what they think is a disaster after we had a green lit script and it was a strike basically implies that they are scabs, which we should 100% lead them to. None of that is in the complaint. None of that. Oh, that bit I'm all over. It's a man coming in to say that this female writer sucks and I need to save it. Let him drown in his own pool and doing it while there was a strike. And Melissa said, "I'm all over the strike." And then Baldoni said, "There's no truce here. Someone should tell his team that we are ready to fight if they keep leaking this shit." I mean, Danny G, it's going to not be good for them. And then Jen's response is, "The RR story came out yesterday, I believe, and incurred further backlash. Media is already calling us about the scab issues." That's what Melissa is talking about for Tatiana Siegel, who is a big film writer, but that's not what her amended complaint says. That's the story he's interested. We need to be smart about how we hit back. Danny G has already communicated this and her teams have been notified. I don't want to lose sight of what the actual issues are. I know with everyone texting you, Justin, and sending you negative press, it feels like it's building, but it's actually not. The overall narrative is very pro-Justin. I like Tatiana doing a larger piece on this, how problematic and Blake and Ryan's comments are to the unions. Okay? That's absolutely not what was portrayed in her complaint. And the chief problem there is apparently that he never said those stories, right? But they never put that story out. There was never a response by Wayfair about the script being written by a female writer. They never put anything out at all. Variety's article was actually largely about if a sequel about the film would be made. There is some discussion about Ryan writing the rooftop scene, but that information was revealed by Blake herself on the red carpet, and nobody at Wayfair knew. And how they addressed it in the article is this. Some screenwriters have said it was odd that Lively admitted during a red carpet interview that her husband Ryan wrote a key scene in the final cut of the film. Sources say that came as news to Baldoni, who thought the scene had been ad libbed by Lively. The WDGA did not respond to requests for comment about whether Reynolds' work is a guild violation that could spark a credits issue. Though movies can have uncredited writers, rarely would the director be unaware of it. Ryan's involvement raises a second WGA issue. The film began production on May 5th, 3 days after the start of the last summer's WGA strike. Reynolds, who received a screenwriter credit on Deadpool 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine, is a WGA member and would have been barred from contributing to the screenplay between May 2nd and September 7th. Writers picketed the New Jersey set, and production was paused in late June before the SAG-AFTRA strike commenced in July. A source close to Reynolds says he took a pass on the scene in April of 23. So there's nothing about flipping the narrative here. There was nothing about it being written by a female author and a feminist writer. Nothing. That's all that's in there about the script. It shares information about the rights to the movie, and that's it. There's nothing disparaging here about Ryan, and there's no discussion about him calling the script a disaster. Instead, it goes directly to statements Blake Lively made. So they intentionally leave out that fact that was never put out in the public. And two, what was put out, Ryan's response was given. And they never implied he scabbed in that article. But Baldoni has evidence and proof that they didn't know that he wrote the script, and Blake portrayed it as though she wrote it. So you can get violated if you are a WGA writer and you do work uncredited. That you're not supposed to do that. And then the scabbing is a whole second issue. So I think part of this lawsuit is Ryan trying to cover up for his WGA behavior and violating the WGA. But Leslie Sloan absolutely did put that story out on August 15th or 14th or 13th. She used Daily Mail and she used the reporter, James Vasuka, to have the story published. The same reporter that also published the disturbing truth behind what happened on the set, where she also outlined a bunch of different things about what Justin had done on the set that was foul, wrong, and abusive. James, has admitted he wrote multiple stories for Leslie. Leslie has admitted to being his source. So they're lying that they weren't the source for that. This is an example of how they are willfully keeping out information that does not benefit them and makes the Wayfair parties look guilty when they're not. They're responding to what Blake's PR agent had done. Now, there's another aspect here where they recently, just a couple days ago, responded to a document, an opposition to the motion to compel. And this has to do with them trying to claim that they were using bots. And here's the example. It also is cold comfort for the Wayfair defendants to offer a unspecific re-review of their productions when they expressly disclaim possession of information that introconvertibly exists. For instance, the Wayfair's defendants disclaim the use of social media bots, trolls, troll farms, paid or incentivized accounts, or seeding, amplified, being boosting, or planting content, despite clear evidence to the contrary. Baldoni, this is an incredible post from someone we have worked with on Man Enough. He nailed it it was my exact intention. And Abel said, let's boost this instead of you posting. I know this video has nothing to do with it, but let's instead have third parties amplify instead of you right now. While Miss Lively is not seeking documents the Wayfair defendants do not have, it is readily apparent that entire categories of responsive communications were improperly withheld based on unreasonable interpretation of Miss Lively's discovery requests. The implication here is that they are using these boostings to post content that is negative to Blake. The problem is they weren't talking about Blake during that text exchange. It was actually a friend of Justin's that made a video of him that was on his Man Enough podcast. And he said this would be a good one to share because he gets it, meaning this is why he made this film. It was a way to share like Justin's point of view. It was not a negative video to be boosted about Blake. It was a video that they said they would boost about his friend. And I don't know what they even mean by boost. He wrote this on the 17th, 2 days after the conversation about Ryan's leak to the Daily Mail. This is an incredible post from someone we have worked with on Man Enough. He nailed it as to my exact intention. Something I could post, and then this message isn't coming from me and it's honoring victims. Okay. And then it says, let's boost it instead of you posting it. Some of the comments reference Colleen romanticizing DV, and we don't want it to be interpreted as a dig at anyone. I know the video has nothing to do with it, but let's instead have third parties amplify instead of you right now. And Baldoni said, understood. So that video was not about Blake. It wasn't about smearing her. It was about someone that was speaking about Justin. He had been on Man Enough. It was something Justin himself wanted to share on social media, and they opted not to because why? Because it wouldn't look good because there were negative comments about Colleen in that post, meaning they were protecting Colleen. They were not boosting or posting stuff about Blake that was negative. You can go look at their social media. They posted Blake's marketing. They posted Blake's videos and her art and her interviews. They did all of that. They weren't boosting negative stories about Blake. And that is a misconception to say they're using this to boost negative stories about Blake, but that's not what that boost or whatever the amplify or whatever she's even talking about means. I don't even know what they're talking about, honestly. I don't know how you boost anything that isn't your own content, but that's just my thing. Either way, it's a misrepresentation to the court. It's assigning malice to something that wasn't malicious. It was about Justin and a friend that's explaining Justin's goal with making the film and what Justin was hoping to get out of making the film. It was a defense of the film. It wasn't a negative blast at Blake. Same as Ryan and them misrepresenting that Sarowitz retaliated against them by wanting to plant a story in response to statements that Ryan made and then lying in their amended complaint claiming Ryan never told anyone to say that. Well, Ryan, maybe you need to have a heart-to-heart with Leslie Sloan because Leslie Sloan absolutely told that to who? The Daily Mail. But I think Ryan knows that. He absolutely knows that. There's no reason why he wouldn't know that. And then him telling her not to respond is 2 weeks later, not the day that article came out. But this is how they confuse people with how they create these documents. They overwhelm, they rely on you not fact checking, not looking back at how all of the text threads line up, not looking at the full context, and relying on you not to look to see, did they actually post an article at that time? No, they did not. They never responded to it, ever. And they can't even link to the article that was published that would have proven that they did retaliate because they didn't. And they didn't retaliate because they would only be responding to press that Leslie Sloan was putting out. So, are you surprised that through this process, it's exposing their lies? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed and click the bell so you never miss